Welcome to Cancer and Peace, everyone. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'll be facilitating our conversation with my good friend, Peter Scalzo. And I think, again, I always say this, we have a great conversation, a great topic to talk about today. And I've named it already.
What is it?
There is no silver bullet.
Okay.
We talked about this. I think it's just a good idea, way of thinking about what we're going to talk about today for the cancer journey and why it's important to peace in a cancer journey is to really to lock onto this concept a little bit.
Yeah, great.
So do you want me to introduce a little bit, or do you want to talk some story about this from your own experience of the silver bullet? Or do you want me to define it a bit?
Yes, define it.
Okay, so we were talking about this a little bit. I think one of the things that happens in recovery is that we talked about in the Serenity Prayer, which is something that we use in recovery all the time, is accepting the things you cannot change and having the courage to change the things you can. And there's a recognition that in our human frailties, we're always searching for solutions. We're looking for the magic bullet for our situation, for what's going on. And this could be whether it's a cancer journey or even financial success. You know, maybe in culture, you might hear the key to success is a good education. But by itself, a good education, it may help move you along in the educational journey, but it's not a silver bullet. It isn't the magic thing that's going to get you there. But there's a lot of good things to think about in the cancer journey. There's a lot of good opportunities for medical healing that can be pursued. But I think we were really trying to get down to is that you had mentioned to me earlier the number of cancer cells. So I'll have you repeat that in a second because I'd already forgot what the number is. But there's,
Excuse me.
Hundreds, thousands?
Yes, more than 1,000.
Yeah, more than 1,000 different cancer cells.
Types, yeah.
So, and what that implies is that there's not one treatment that's going to meet all those different cell constructs that are cancerous. And I think the thing that I think you've learned in your journey, but I think it's a life principle also, is that there's not a silver bullet. And when one spends their life, their time, especially in a cancer journey where you may have limited time, if you spend it chasing a silver bullet, you're probably not going to be doing that in peace. And this podcast is about peace, finding peace in the middle of a cancer journey. And I think we've talked a little bit, and what we're not wanting to do is in any way discourage people from finding and pursuing medical treatment for cancer. And so we were thinking about, well, what's important to know? What's important to know on this journey? And if you recognize that there's not a magic solution or a silver bullet solution, how do you know, what the right thing to do? How do you work forward in this? And so one of my more interesting things is the number of people that come up and tell you, Peter, and I've seen it for relatives that have been involved in deep journeys. Have you thought about this? Have you tried this? Have you done that? And as soon as you get all these suggestions coming your way, you can be inundated. And I think about it almost like on the recovery journey, we had this idea called no fixing.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a principle that we want to think about applying here, and also a question to ask yourself on the backside of this. And so, and that principle might be a guideline to think about on your cancer journey and as you're going along, and to ask other people to walk in those guidelines, and a question to ask yourself. And that question really is getting you to look inside of yourself at what's motivating your pursuit.
Yeah. So let me, so I think for me, we're talking about two different perspectives. One from the cancer patient, that perspective, and then the other from the person who's coming alongside of them saying, have you thought about X?
Yes,
and it might be a family member or someone in your social circle, church, whichever. And so, yes, I mean, my experience with this has been almost 18 years of interacting in this space. And first of all, I'll talk about the interactions that I've had with cancer patients themselves, because many times my involvement with a cancer patient is they've just been diagnosed. I hold myself out there publicly as a person who's 17 years on this cancer journey, speaks about the journey. I visit many cancer centers with a lot of different folks and discuss even treatments with them, even though I'm not a medical expert, but just helping them navigate just through the emotional issues about that. So usually the person who's diagnosed with cancer, of course, a medical doctor is telling them, hey, the scan shows X, the biopsy shows this, the pathology is this, and then the oncologist will lay out, or the surgeon, what they think is the best way to go towards treatment. And, the medical community is steeped into the data. They know what gold standards are. Like, sometimes they'll say, or sometimes someone will say to me, well, do you think immunotherapy is the answer or whatever? And it's like, you know what? You have to check with your oncologist because they have clinical trials, they have the data, and they have the research of traditional medical means, what works best. And so I see a person who gets diagnosed with cancer, chooses the traditional medical means, and then for them, once they choose a medical team that they trust, that's a big issue, is on the journey to get to a cancer center. And, there's major cancer centers out there, and there's hospitals who have cancer centers, but they do a whole bunch of other stuff. The major cancer centers like an MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Dana-Farber, those places, they only deal with cancer. And so they're at the forefront of clinical trials, new discoveries. They do a lot of research, but they only deal with cancer. And so some people say, well, I want to go there. The track for me usually, because I live in the Memorial Sloan Kettering area and Yale and those, but the track is usually someone gets diagnosed from a local hospital, and then we travel to a major cancer center as a second opinion or to switch treatment. But there's a switch at which the person makes a decision to settle in a certain medical place or team, treatment or whatever. Yes. And there's peace in making that decision. Okay, I've done the best I can. And there might be some other research into, should I change my diet? How should I exercise? And, cancer centers have nutritionists and all that. And there may even be some alternative treatment kinds of, can I add this particular nutrient or vitamin to my diet? Can I, what sort of other options can I do, which then they usually pass it by the medical doctor, that kind of thing. But usually when they settle on the treatment that they think is best for them, there is peace in that decision.
So I think I hear an important principle is recognizing there's not a silver bullet. You need to get to a point where you make a decision. If you're a cancer patient, this is the journey I'm going to go on, make that decision, and not be afraid to tell people this is a decision I made. This is the path I'm on, and it's not possible to do 100 different things and chase everything that somebody might bring to you.
And I have countless stories that fit almost any scenario, such as a gentleman in church who said, I'm going to treat my cancer God's way, which for him was taking vitamins and supplements, and for prostate cancer. And I rarely do this, but I said, well, why don't you at least get a second opinion somewhere? And by the time he was ready to get a second opinion, the cancer had already spread and he passed. Or a person who was treated in a medical situation decided to change that treatment alternative and pass. Or people who did alternative treatments and did fine. And so I personally come alongside people to support their decision and to maybe ask thoughtful questions to get them thinking, but not to steer how they're going to treat their cancer,
Yeah. I think this is the important piece about this podcast is that
Right.
you're not here today trying to give a medical, hey, here's what you should do with your medical journey. What we're really talking about here is finding peace with the journey that you're on.
Yeah. And even a lot of times the cancer patient deals with cause. Did I do something to bring, smoke too much? Did I eat the wrong things? And so even in my book, I don't know what causes cancer. I don't know why a cell will mutate and change and start dividing uncontrollably. I don't know. But I do know what I do for cause is I just draw like a circle and do pie sections and talk about stress, talk about the environment, talk about the foods we eat.
When I get these microphone covers, the state of California said these are known to cause cancer. And so just so you're aware, it could be, it gives you an idea how big, how broad. It's like this.
Right, because
you have these government entities saying almost everything now is likely to cause cancer. So I'm not trying to be political here. I'm actually kind of laughing. It's like, yes, it's so broad what could be viewed as a cancer cause.
So that's on the cancer patient side. What do I do? The other side is, what do you do with the people who come up to you and say, oh man, you are missing it. There's this guy that the FDA won't recognize. He's got the cure and you're just missing it. Or you mean you didn't try eating? When my mom had ovarian cancer, someone told her that she needed to eat more oysters. From the spectrum is huge. And so I try to gently, as best I can, talk to that person who wants to fix, as you said earlier, about they're walking into an extremely sensitive context because the cancer patient's already dealing with the emotions. We already talked about that, of fear and sadness and doubting and all that kind of hopelessness at times. And am I doing the right thing? I remember my going to a very prominent faith healer, and my mom, we went to it, and he publicly said, "You're going to be cured from your cancer."
Exactly happened to my mom. Not the faith healing, but I've had people coming from the faith healing community came to her. Prayed. I was like, "You're going to be healed."
Right, and mom passed. And
2 weeks later, she passed. Yes. Exact same thing happened.
Yeah.
I want to throw out a couple of word stems and see what your thoughts are on these as potential solutions. And maybe I think when one asks for advice, that's the right time to give advice. If you have something to offer. Yeah. But when it's not invited, then usually that's what I would put into this fixing category is that people are coming to give you a fix. Hey, Peter needs to know this.
Right. So
let me give this piece of nice advice to you. And so I'll give you word stems to say back and let's see what you think about these, if these are healthy. These are coming from Pete Scalzo's Emotionally Healthy Relationships course. Yeah. And I was thinking about too, as we were talking just out, it's like, hey, how do you handle people in this situation? And one of the things is if you want to, be direct, but not be offensive is I noticed that you said this. I noticed that you're suggesting a treatment, and I really prefer just your support in my journey is one thing you could say.
Yeah. That's great.
And another time, sometimes a different approach could be is maybe you're not quite sure where they're coming from. And you could say, he uses the term puzzles. I'm puzzled at why you're suggesting a treatment to me. Can you give me more detail? Is it that you think I'm on the wrong track? But it's asking a puzzle because it's putting back the question of why are you giving me a fix? Why are you giving me advice? And depending on who the person is and what's going on may depend on which one of those word stems you might want to use. But what do you think about those for the situations we're talking about? Would that work? Would that be helpful? Because I think, giving some tools for this could be helpful for somebody because I think I've seen this a lot where people just have so much advice, but
Yeah.
the last thing you need for peace is a million alternatives. Like in our
Right.
fast-paced society, you go to eat somewhere and to have 500 items on the menu is not helpful at times. If the
Right.
menu's 10,
Well, I mean, and I'll go one step further than that,
just
and
don't say shut up.
I'm going to use a scriptural story
Okay.
because I just love this story, and it's of a man named Job that had almost everything taken away from him except he didn't die, but he had his children passed, his business, his reputation. His wife said, just curse God and die after all these events that happened. And he had 3 friends that came to him because they wanted to comfort him. And the problem is they came to him with their own agenda, which was, hey, listen, buddy, you've done something wrong, that you've brought all this calamity upon yourself from something you've done.
Mm-hmm.
And let's find out what that is. But before they began that questioning to try to fix the situation and fix him, they sat with him for 7 days. And I tell people that's the greatest gift that you can give a person in cancer, is to sit and don't say anything. Or if you do active listening. It's a gift.
Describe active listening. Let's just go through.
Active listening is to when the person does communicate, is to reflect and parrot back what you think they're saying so they can clarify it. It's to help them think through their feelings and thoughts and what's going on. It's to do that actively, and then at the end to say, is there anything else you'd like to add to what you're saying? And
yes,
what would you like me to take away from this?
Yes, I like that last piece. When we do that here, it's what's the most important thing you want me to remember from this conversation? That's active listening, and then state it back to them. That's such a great gift, isn't it?
I've given talks. I've been around people, and they've rushed up to me and said, have you tried X? Right? And how I felt defensive.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I guess I'm not smart enough, or I'm on the wrong track. I'm making a mistake in my cancer journey. And I love what you said. I notice this and I prefer this, or I'm puzzled.
Yes.
I think those are great ways to come back.
I think notice and prefer really does something, is because it's letting them know that, hey, there's a problem, and then addressing that, but you're not trying to be confrontational or in their face. It's like, hey, notice this is what's happening, and this is what I really like from you. And so it still invites them to continue engaging the relationship, but with this is how I'd like you to engage. And it helps you to still do this journey. I'm deeply empathetic of what you were talking about earlier, just thinking about once I start down a treatment course, second guessing that is not going to move me towards peace. And you can't just keep starting and stopping and doing 1,000 things. That's why we're calling this episode "There Is No Magic Bullet," is because if you keep starting and stopping and chasing after a magic bullet, you're probably not in peace, and you may even end up hurting yourself.
Yeah, and if anyone in their cancer journey should have a magic bullet, it's me, because I was in a place of, in 2017, cancer throughout. Let's send Peter home so he can do an end-of-life journey and call hospice. And we discovered an immunotherapy drug that had 6 months earlier had been approved by the FDA. And it was for metastatic, high-grade urothelial cancer patients with barely any kidney function, with poor kidney function. That was me. And I started on immunotherapy. It's a checkpoint inhibitor, which is designed to harness the body's own immune system, my own immune system, to go after the cancer. And it worked. I was in less than a 1% category. We watched tumors disappear. My doctor put a scope inside of me and yelled at the top of his lungs in his office. And he's a world-class guy, surgeon. It worked. But that didn't prompt me to run around saying, hey, if you're not on immunotherapy, you're missing the boat. It worked for me.
Yeah, and you weren't chasing that.
No, because before that, I had already, this may be difficult for some to accept, but I had already accepted the fact that I was going to transition into glory. My spirituality, my intimacy with the Lord and my spirituality was really, I really knew that I knew where I was going to be at death. And so I had accepted that. Was I dealing with tough emotions? Of course, because I was doing an end of life as a man with 6 kids, a law practice, all that, and so it was really difficult. And I've talked about that. What brought purpose and meaning in that? We've talked about that, but I was at peace. And when the treatment started to work, I was kind of like blown away by that.
Surprised.
In awe.
Yeah.
Surprised. It's not like I brought a certain kind of faith or belief. I didn't. I was like, okay, if that's what's available, let's try it.
Yes. So I think it's important. Sorry. Getting all choked up about just talking about this.
You want me to talk?
Yes, I do. But I was just thinking about in your journey and what you've seen out there. There are a lot of different approaches, and your goal is not to mock somebody's approach or say that it's wrong.
Yep.
There are certainly things that you and I have seen that we don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, with this podcast, we're not trying to say, hey, this is wrong. It's really thinking about, as you go down a road, is how do you find peace?
That's right.
And I think understanding peace means that you're not living in anxiety, that you're not chasing something as a magic bullet. And so the questions, I was kind of really thinking about, what's the question that you would ask yourself? Peter, what would you ask yourself to know whether or not you're chasing, looking, searching for the answer, trying to control? What's the question you ask yourself?
I've been in a position with metastatic cancer where people have offered and told me, have you checked out like even a pill that dogs take for whatever, or have I run down to New Mexico or Mexico for treatment or over to Europe? And I think it's a personal decision where you, and I prayed about it and the issue was accepting. It was the first part of the serenity prayer. Accepting those things that I can't change. If I felt strongly about a particular treatment, that would be the courage to change the things that I can, was to try that. But I was already at 3 major cancer centers with my journey. I was at Sloan Kettering, Yale, Lenox. I was doing the whole cancer center journey. And so I was more traditional and thinking. I did work on my diet and exercise. I've always done that. I've never been too heavy. I've never had a bad diet. I mean, my mom made meals from scratch. My wife was an excellent cook, always cooked great meals, like very healthy meals. Mm-hmm. And, I was never like a soda drinker, or I never smoked a cigarette, and I had a smoker's cancer. The bladder cancer I had was usually occurred in people that smoked. I never smoked one cigarette. So, I just, I think it was getting to the point of, if I had done nothing at all, if I had not done any research and I had not gone to any cancer centers or to see what traditional medicine, the current medical community did, then I would have felt anxious. But for me, I needed to do something. and I was at peace with the, with the teams that I had, with the medical teams.
So I'm going to take my biblical role here, Peter, and say, as one of Joe's friends, that you must have sinned.
Well, that's true. I sin all the time. So, yeah, I guess it's a fair statement.
Yeah, I'm being funny because
Yeah.
it's like this, the concept is like, you just don't know what has caused cancer or something that appears to be a negative something in somebody's life. And so to judge that's not our role.
Well, that might be a whole nother discussion, because I've known so many, and this is like in the Christian community, so many godly people, whether they're pastors or whatever, get diagnosed with cancer and pass with cancer. So I know it doesn't have anything to do with their spirituality, whether they have enough faith kind of thing.
Right.
And we can talk about that in another podcast.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just thinking about, you've talked a little bit about getting set on your treatment and just coming to peace with that and not allowing yourself to be oversteered. It doesn't mean that new treatments can't come out that might be really beneficial. So you're not even trying to stop that. It's whether or not you're frantic inside trying to come up with a solution. And I was thinking, when we were from a recovery basis, the way we think about approaching this is, am I going to God first? Like, am I starting out with my higher power, the one who is in control, and seeking guidance there first? And that's probably a way of knowing whether or not I'm trying to solve.
But that's what you said is the key. I mean, and the issue with it, if I'm being honest with the Lord and have that intimacy, is he playing hide and seek with me with the cancer treatment? I just don't think that's the way he would operate. I think if there was a cancer treatment he would want me to be on, he would disclose it to me, and then it would be confirmed by other people in my life, and it would be like, okay, I know I need to do this.
Whenever I feel anxiousness and it's about something that I think I lack understanding on, and if my first response is to go jump online and start searching for an answer or solution or something, I'm working from what I would call Sean power. And to me, that's like our first litmus test. And that never brings peace, ever. So you're not discouraging being able to seek forward in a journey, for a medical journey, but it really is understanding what's motivating you, what's driving you, and learning how to release that to your higher power and to walk in that, because there's a level of acceptance of this journey, and that it's more than just a medical journey.
That's the thing is, I mean, we're talking about, have I sought enough options out? But the issue is really an emotional/spiritual one. Yeah. And that's where the solution. I remember I was in after one of my diagnoses, I think it might have been, it was either 2015 or 2017, the elders and pastors decided to have an all-night prayer vigil for me, which I went to. There were like 21 of us. I lasted till like 5 a.m. But it was all about praying for me, and I incorporated all the cancer people, all the people who were struggling with cancer within the church, and we incorporated some other things. But I remember one of the elders said to me, have you tried everything? Have you tried everything? Kind of with a frantic look. And I said, and I remember I said to him, no, I haven't, and I'm not going to. I said, I'm not going to chase cancer cures. I have a life to live. And it's not about the cancer and chasing cancer cures. This is how I felt. If God wants to heal me, I'm going to be healed. If he's going to take me home, I'm going to go home. That's the acceptance part. That's the part that I was in right there. It doesn't mean I felt that kind of peace all the time, but I think overall I had that peace that, okay, this is where I'm at.
That seems...
That's a gift.
Yeah. I think that's helpful for anybody who's starting out their cancer journey, just to hear, or who's in the middle of this and is getting those pressures and trying to, hey, what do I do with those? It's understanding that peace doesn't come through chasing, through, worry,
Right.
but it really is accepting those things that you cannot change. We talked about it in the Serenity Prayer, but I think we just wanted to be in a little bit more detail today about not chasing a magic bullet. And this isn't in any way trying to steer you down a course of what your treatment should look like or whether alternative versus traditional. None of that. This is all about you looking inside and saying, hey, what's motivating me? And peace comes when we accept and then stay the course. That's the thing I would say too. Staying the course on the journey is such an important part of any spiritual journey. And I think this is a spiritual journey and an emotional journey, is that you'll have to work through those things. And hopefully some of those tools where we were, hey, how do you address people who are coming along who are trying to steer you off course a little bit or giving you a fix? Maybe some of those tools, such as I notice and I prefer, can be helpful.
Because I think the issue is not what treatment somebody chooses, what you were just saying. I mean, for me, it's not. But are they at peace?
Yeah. And that's what we're really looking to provide, is some resources and understanding. And hopefully off of the backside of this, from looking at your own journey there, that somebody can say, well, I have felt those pressures. I understand that. And maybe they'll find some peace just in knowing that there is no magic bullet, but there is peace. And so I think
that's the silver bullet.
That's the silver bullet. That's great. There is no silver treatment. I don't know. We'll have to think about that a bit. But
it's peace.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to our conversation today. We're going to wrap here and come back again for another episode in another week. But if you want to get more resources, go to cancerandpeace.com and you'll see Even Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, which I put out there. There's a link out there to that, as well as Peter's book, Cancer and Peace, and many others. So we look forward to seeing you guys again.
Blessings to you.